Hello, welcome to Role Play Cafe. I want to get on here a minute because I've just watched Robert the Narrator's Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master, episode 69, I believe, where he speaks about the game that he ran, Jason and David and I through. His game, Peace the RPG. It was two modules, I believe he said. I think it was 3 sessions, 2 or 3 sessions that we ran through. Great game sessions, even though he laments the fact that spoiler alert, two of us died uh, at the end. But I think it was appropriate, and I'll get to why in a second. Um, First, he lays out the fact that it's very good information on there. So if you jump on there, he will kind of outline how he approaches mysteries and conspiracies to keep you from, you know, breaking that aspect in the game. Because characters, as we know, will go off on their own tangents for whatever reason. I think, and later on, just as a little caveat here, I'll approach why I'm on here and how I think Dark Age of Man handles that. The game Jason and I are developing. But first of all, to comment a little bit on what Robert said, uh, is summary he had laid out in the first session. It was a ritual happening. We were part of a caravan. The ritual was held in the mountain, the Devil's Horns, and it was disrupting the wildlife. So we were having to contend with this wild horde of oxalo, I believe, that was running us down. The crows or the birds would blot out the sky. We knew something was up. And the wildlife were adding peculiar and unusual and unstable. Even when we got to town, there was two planestalkers that were attacking the townsfolk. So and Robert rightly points out that we can either become involved in this or not. The thing is, we're caught up and we're swept up into a large. We're swept up in events, and we're going to be swept up in events. We can engage to whatever degree, but they're going to be knocking on the door. So we gotta contend with and handle them. And when you're playing a role playing game, you're an adventurer and you want to handle it. Especially in Robert's game, you are adventurers. That's what you're charged with. So I like that aspect about his game, that you're held accountable to do that. You're looked at by the populace as adventurers. They flock to you to resolve the uh, business of safeguarding their interest and whatnot. Well, nevertheless, we got there. We had NPCs to talk to, discover what is going on here. Yeah, a lot of the wildlife is this and that. We discovered um, through inquiry that led us to the Devil's Horns what exactly was going on there. And whenever we dealt with that problem, we discovered some things. So basically, Robert rightly says that you're dealing with the aftermath, or basically the residual effects of something that's already in process. So this ritual was already in process. We were dealing with the effects of it. We had to track it down, find out what was going on, contend with it, and then he dropped some information, a scroll outlining what it was. It was part of a larger conspiracy that was going on. And another such ritual was being taken place in Shrill, which behind me I put this wallpaper up, or backboard up of what I envision Shrill to look like, right? City of debauchery, etc. So when we're there, we make our way there. We at least have some goal or some guideline, or more of a direction toward unraveling this mystery, this conspiracy, and trying to find the head of the snake. So it was to be able to cut it off. When we get there, we find out that it was in two part. It had to do with a child. In Shrill, like you had stated before, even a child's life, anything could be bought, paid for. It's a city of sin that puts Las Vegas to shame. But nevertheless, we had to deal with that. We had to track down and find, rescue the child, uh, found out what was going on, found out the father, the mother, the odd love interest that had happened between a noble and a commoner. And why would this be? We found more information by interrogating the father, and we were in charge of seeing her back purposely to safety to her down the fortress. Right now, all along the way, we had picked up information. I think Jason's character found out that there was a dark ring of bonding on the mage that would, if you understand what the ring was, it tied that mage to his master. So then we would know that there was more of a there was another culprit, you know, that was in the hierarchy on another level that we had to deal with, a big baddie, so to speak, right? Well, the thing is that whenever, and this is the point I should say, because Robert says that you should be transparent, and 100% agree with that. You know, with your divulgence of the clues. You know, it's all right in one aspect. If I walk into a room and I see, you know, as far as the GM saying, you know, a key could be hidden in a ceramic pot on the mantle, you know, of a fireplace in a room. But you better, as a GM, point out that there's a mantle with a pot over there. You know, point out about three things in the room when you're describing it that will keep people off, and maybe they can search for something and uncover something and have an aha moment. Yeah, in the bottom of the ceramic pot, you find a key that could lead to a door that would prompt you otherwise. But don't bury it underneath the ashes in the fireplace and just mention the fireplace. You know, the point is that the players have enough to contend with because they're playing characters, and we were playing in character. There was a lot of in character. We playing, you know, we'll be keeping the integrity of the character whole. The players ourselves, I may hear that Jason has that dark ring of bonding, or that he understands through a check that he understands what it means exactly. But the fact is, if he doesn't impart that information to my character doesn't know. And when you're immersing your character, you're playing from that headspace. You're not going to meta game and go on that level. So that's a whole other aspect that players contend with, is their character knowledge, and they're playing inside that. Now, when Jason was playing his character, everybody has their own agenda and their worldviews that may stand at odds with their fellows, uh, you know, in different beliefs and how they engage with the world, and that is intriguing and palatable to me as far as the enjoyment I get out of role play. And I believe for Jason and Dave, we were all, and even, you know, Robert was, like he said in his Embarrassment of Riches video, that everybody was playing the role, and that was key. You don't want to break that immersive, you know, the integrity of the character. You're going to be playing correctly, and you got to contend with that. So as a GM, when you're giving these clues, don't hide them under a pile of manure, or say they need to, you know, this thing is over here, and it's going to take searching upon searching to uncover this. Because even when they get the clues, whether or not they're forthcoming with their fellows and their party about the information, or whether they think they take it as like a grain of salt and say it's not really important and don't impart it to the group, then it can't be weighed into and factored in how further developments need to be approached. And this was ultimately what Robert did with the two games. He said was, after we had dealt with the peripheral effects of this ritual, found out why that another ritual was being constructed, found out a little bit more deeper information. We went to Shrill, found out where the next ritual, and stopped that, and then dug a little bit deeper and found out to go back to the root of the problem, to find out who basically instigated this. So who was ultimately the mastermind? Um, like I said, the players were a little bit not necessarily, we were playing the characters. The characters wasn't necessarily forthcoming with all the information. We were playing our characters accordingly. And when we decided to accompany the princess back safely to the fortress, the Vizier was the main culprit, but we didn't know that our characters didn't, to be able to approach the situation and ambush the Vizier or keep the information from getting back to him. He had found out that we were the particular individuals that were uncovering or undermining his plot. And so we walked into his trap. Now, luckily, one of us survived to get out of there. And like I said, Robert, you know, yeah, he's a nice guy. So you don't want, he's going to grim us whenever somebody dies. But honestly, if we don't, I had no problem whatsoever with that. And I don't think any of us did, because it felt real, like things were really happening. If a DM pulls punches, I don't like it. I have to. It's like telling a lie with somebody, and then they're lying and they know they're lying, but you kind of accept it. That's the way it feels to me whenever you're playing a game and somebody pulling punches or soft selling something to you, and you're like, no, this isn't really happening. So the deaths felt like they had meaning, that they were warranted in the fiction. The two characters that have passed away. Spoiler alert, like I said, and the sessions are fantastic. We had a great time. Things made sense inside the fiction and the narrative. Everything added up. The reasoning behind the characters and their motivations played out, even to their own detriment. But you are who you are as a character. And whether or not a situation is to your advantage or disadvantage, and how you contend with that situation, how it plays out, it needs to be real. And Robert kept it real for us, and we played the characters with integrity and kept them real. And so the situation and the end of it had more weight. It was tangible, it was plausible. Yes, this would happen with these characters in the situation. So we wasn't gaming the game to approach it just for the fact of, let's get all of our information so we can approach this guy. It just didn't happen to where the characters, each on their own, were forthcoming with the information that was needed to devise a situation, or to throw up enough red flags to know we need to approach the situation this way. So it was really great. Secondarily, I think I need to, I said I was going to approach about how Dark Age of Man game Jason and I are building, how the naive narrator stance can facilitate mystery, conspiracy, because admittedly so, we play even the presenter, which is you may want to generically call him a DM, but he's not really, we can't quantify him as a GM because he is just as naive as the players. He is accountable for the NPCs and the world's reactions to the players and interactions with the players. The players themselves are responsible for their actions and interactions of their character. So, presenter will lay out a skeletal thing, and the players will flesh out what they see, and it builds up in the table, and everybody has this organic experience. And it's facilitated by the presenter rolling on a random seed chart for events triggering and happening, and some of them may lay in wait as a trap down there, or have an overall effect of the areas. So how would this facilitate mysteries to come about? And strangely enough, just through the organic play and back and forth, there are constant mysteries, because the uncertainty, the die will decide the uncertainty. Plus, it also has an effect on deciding truths in the world. To give an overlay, even the narrative seed will be informed by what previously happened or what is happening in the moment, to roll over into the next session, where there's declarative statements and fleshing out of the players that add to it, like Brian's in Rising, where he elaborated on why we were going to Rising, because he was a noble and he was trying to reestablish trade with the 10 mines that hadn't come in there. So everything adds to the world, as long as it can be plausibly applied to the situation and doesn't break or cause characters to suspend their belief, then it's allowable. It's allowable within the bounds. So everybody is having this experience that's organically grown that informs future facts in the world and informs the incoming seeds that are put in the random seed generator that can be rolled to see just what things are being triggered at any point in time, that the players, that the world, the resistance of the world, and how it affects the players and how they need to contend with and respond to those events. And so it just grows from there. Now, as far as the overlapping effects in game, there's an example when I ran Jorian and Derek through a game recently here. I'd rolled the first one was Plague. Now I'd set them in a situation where they met up in a inn, the inn and tail, but for some reason I said that it was just them two and the lady, the proprietor of the inn. And she was talking, they was having a dialogue. She was servicing them, and one of them asked, "Why is there no one here? You know, what's going on?" Well, I'd rolled Plague. And how was I going to introduce that? So I said, well, the plague is really shut down everything. It was supposed to have a fair coming through here. I rolled with it like that. So that set kind of precedent of what was going on in the place. And they could play off of it, and I could play off of too. So we rolled with that. Well, they went out in town a little bit and decided to go back to the inn. I'd rolled Sin Eater, which in effect is like, historically somebody who was probably looked at with much disdain. They were tasked with basically taking on your sin, and so they were condemned essentially, of taking this on, but they had to do it for subsistence and for money or whatever like that. But they would turn away at every door, right? Well, in this world, I'll put a little twist on it. As when I rolled that, when they was coming back to the end, how am I going to introduce this? They're just on the other side of the bank because the hotel is right on a riverbank. There's a ferry right there. It's the ferryman. So I just said, you see two people that are shrouded up, with bandages or whatever like that. And they're beckoning for the ferryman to bring them across. And the ferryman, obviously, one thing leads to another. 2 + 2 adds up. Is he going to be, when he sees this sign, is he going to really recognize what they are? Is he going to be more reluctant because there's now instigated an element that there's a plague about, or rumors of a plague? Should he go there and endanger himself, right? Do they have the Rona? So he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. There's an argument. Now, the two fellows that playing, Jorian and Derek, one of them there was nice little interplay of character there because one of them was a scoundrel. They were both of nobility, having one prestige apiece. So they had a little bit of weight to throw around, but they were throwing it around in different ways. So Derek was more of a scoundrel. He was putting up his thing. And Jorian was more of a noble, but he was pretentious and he wanted to at least emanate around him this facade of nobility. And he was, but he was a blowhard. So he takes this opportunity to go rescue that because they're like, no, the ferryman's no, you got the plague and all this stuff. And it was like, they're like, no, we're Sin Eaters. We're trying to get across to get to the monastery to divulge our tend to be wiped clean, as it were. So he's like, yes, they are. I'm going to get on this ferry. He's going to get on that ferry himself and go across there after the ferryman went into his little cottage to get away from it. So he's trying to get across there after their little dialogue. And I had to laugh because it was almost like he was taking it as an if-then statement. No, they didn't have the plague because they were that, right? Which is correct to his character. His character was eager to believe something if it was facilitate his stature, And so he's doing this. Derek's character really sees no gain in it, but he's playing along because maybe he can leverage this and that. And halfway across there, they're trying to wade into the water to reach up there, right? And at a moment where he's like, they don't have this and that. And I kind of laughed, on screen, you see in the actual play. I said, really, I don't know if they do or not. It's so funny to me that a die roll didn't determine if they do or if they don't. So at that time, I rolled the die. I said the water washed over them. You could see, the shroud basically get clear on their face, and there was no signs of plague-like blotches or anything like that. So luckily, they didn't have the plague. So it made it fact at that point in time. But at any point in time, it can change on a dime. I could have rolled literally, and then they would have to contend with possibly getting the plague themselves, and it could have gone off in any direction. That's how an overlay in session of these random seeds that are propping up will affect and have weight and bear on each other, and this and the and how this resistance of the world affects them and how the characters respond to that is the key. That interactive. That's the main mechanism of Dark Age of Man. That interaction, that narrative interaction, flow back and forth. The truths are being determined via the dice, and the interaction and the social change is all pertinent with that die, creating any uncertainty or question and making it a truth. All right, as far as the declarations. Now, whenever, as far as a mystery, I maybe could throw back to whenever Jason ran Derek and I through a session of Dark Age of Man. And basically, it's Ireland where he had, Ireland. And we had to go into, we were tasked to get from the Pope a relic that was being supposedly held in a monastery or around. We didn't know exactly where it was, but we had a contact that was supposed to meet on the shores, a monk who's going to lead us in. But the problem is it's Dane infested. The Danes have taken it over that area for 50 years. So we had to at least, how would we approach it? You don't care. We just got to figure it out. We can either, go in there guns akimbo, or just try to sleuth our way through and slink and stay undetected as we get to the monastery. But this monk was supposed to be there, but he wasn't. And I know Jason probably rolled a dice to find out the truth of whether the monk would actually get there, or whether he would have gotten caught or whatever, which is a mystery in itself because he wasn't there. And we got up there. What are we going to do? Found out a little bit of information, found a North Star, started heading across to where that, because my character happened to be, from Ireland. And I had stated that the character was previously, he had been taken by the Danes. His home was taken by the Danes. His woman, his children, sold off in slavery, probably down in Constantinople for all I know. And he happened to get away, but he despises the Danes, right? So it was hard for me as a character in play, like I said, the integrity of the character, not to want it, to jump on any Dane I saw, but I knew that, when it comes down to that fear aspect of being overwhelmed, he had a survival instinct, so he kept that, it keeps him in check. We made our way to the place and to the monastery, found out it was being besieged. All right. So Jason rolls, probably kicked off by a random seed thing. Well, the monastery is actually being besieged by supposedly these Vikings. And then we determined how to access or get inside of the monastery to find out we needed to find out information. We didn't know where this relic was being held, but we knew that this monk came from that monastery. Was he still there? They found out, no, he wasn't. He had left off for us. In fact, didn't get back. They didn't see us. They lost hope. They sent out this detachment from there to go try to get the relic, right? So we had to then track it down. But it's an organic kind of mystery that comes up that the dice can kind of dictate in any moment throughout play naturally, just on a micro level of play, that these mysteries will come up. Now we all of a sudden, where did this guy go? If we wanted to chase down his characters to go rescue this monk, or where did he go? The die, the narrative, and Jason speaks before in a video about the assumption risk. And whenever you're trying to play and you're trying to chase down, if like Robert rightly said, that you have to be swept away in it and you have to respond. My words, being swept away, but essentially that's how I view what he's saying. You get caught up in this overarching thing. It's happening. Whether or not you really pick up on the clues or as you advantage to you in the situation you're going to get swept away, either to your detriment in certain situations because you don't recognize certain clues or add them up correctly. So they bear and have weight in the session in that response. But he said, still, you move forward in the momentum of the story. Things are happening on a world scale that you're involved with. And in this game, like I said, you're the heroes and you partake in it. And so you have a certain responsibility and duty to be tasked to do. All right. So back up to us. In Dark Age of Man, when we're sitting there and we got to trace down everything that's happening. And like I said, on a microcosm, while we're playing, little truths and little mysteries will develop just on the dice because even the naive narrator doesn't know. Jason does not know what happened with that monk, Seamus, that we were supposed to meet. All he knows was he wasn't there. If we wanted to follow that lead and track down, we could. We could always go after him. We need to find out where he is. Is he being held by these Vikings over in the corner here? But I said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to skirt around these Vikings and get the heck out of Dodge because that survival instinct is too much weight. We know what we have to do. Let's get to that monastery. Maybe another monk knows where this is. Maybe Seamus isn't the only one with the information, right? Maybe he was just a detachment was sent out to meet us to lead us back. So that's how we played it. But these little mysteries can evolve in play with the naive narrator as you go. And of course, because there can be an overarching mystery that you want to solve if you want to set in and not just have total aimless vanilla start and dredge water or Dark Age of Man setting, which will grow, like I said, incidentally, these little mysteries that compound themselves from session to session as you deepen the narrative and as things that you've interacted with compound and add and thicken and layer up everything. And everything's related, even tangentially to each other, and they affect and trigger each other's happenings and change the world right in front of your eyes organically. And everybody's aware that not and alive in this, that they're seeing all of this go down and understanding it. But like I say, you're playing characters, so you're only responsible for what your character is privy to in session. All right, like I said, I didn't know Jason's character knew what that ring of bonding meant. And he may have been keeping it for his own private, leveraging at some later state. Or maybe he just thought, yeah, that's nice, as far as in his character's headspace. So really, like Robert said, just a throwback, it's very, very important to be transparent rather, in giving you the clues. You don't hold back. You don't make them go through a series of hoops or jump or dance like a chicken on a hot tin plate or a cat on a hot tin roof for that matter. You just have to give it there because they have enough to contend with their interrelations and how they affect the world and what may in the world be to their detriment that changes the situation overall. If they're trying to lay an ambush for the big baddie at the end and that for some reason doesn't happen, or they screw that up in some way along the lines, anything can happen. So you need to be forthcoming with that. But as far as how it's approached in Dark Age of Man, you can set them off into the unknown. A presenter can say, in that case with Robert's game, once you've played enough, and maybe if there would have been some kind of uncovering of a realization at the start of Dark Age of Man that I roll that these animals are just going wild or whatever, and you rationally come to some kind of a thing that maybe there's a ritual in the area that is prompting these. You know what I'm saying? Or rituals keyed in, and then you draw a line between the two, and you go, that's why the ritual. That's why in the after effect, why all the wildlife was going crazy. So you're constantly drawing these lines and connections, and your neurons and your brain are connecting at the same time when you're connecting everything in this world as you see it and making sense of this world. So in Dark Age of Man, that same situation would have came up organically, possibly, if it was ever to come up there, if I rolled ritual, if I rolled wildlife was that, and then you draw those two conclusions. And then if some kind of a note would have been, some information is rolled on the random seed chart, at that time, it could have led us to the fact that, oh, another imparted us with information. And so anything would have got us to a point to that. If you wanted to start from a base vanilla level to lead you up to that, or you can start like Jason did with us, with a task. Maybe he could tasked us to go stop some kind of a paganistic ritual, like in Kevin's game before we was responsible for doing. So you can always be tasked with a goal and try to follow through, or not, or go anywhere, or find out through a random roll that it really wasn't what at face value was thought to be in the first place. You discover truths and you discover whether or not things actually happen, but you're never off course. As Jason said, with the assumption risk, there's no solid, this is what's happening, but you guys are over here because you're still interacting. Dark Edge Domain, you're still interacting with the world on you're still affecting it no matter your location in the world. As you see, it grows organically at the table in front of everybody live, and you still have an effect on the world as you go, whether or not it's aimless play or there's a goal instigated in the play that has some kind of initial bearing at the start, and then you play off of that. It's approachable and multifaceted in approach. So anyway, appreciate you listening if you've got this far. And Robert, great video. Like I said, episode 69, if anybody wants to hop on there. Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master, Robert the Narraider. So when he did that, so yeah, I think it's important because that mystery aspect doesn't need to be lost in regular play. Doesn't need to be so elusive that GMs can't implement it into game. It don't need to be a towel thrown in because it just don't work. It just don't, because he does give you some good information on how to make it work in play, more thorough than I did. Okay, so anyway, everybody have a great day out there, and I will talk at you later. All right, take care.